In the effervescent echo chamber of the internet, there exists a convergence of personalities so profoundly tangled, so irreversibly intertwined, that their digital footprints have begun to blur into an indistinguishable mass of hyperbole, performative rhetoric, and self-aggrandizement.
The LA Man community on Twitter is more active than Nick Fuentes or Hassan's community. On Twitter, it's a superpower. Well, so we're more active than Hassan's community because Hassan doesn't have a community that much, really. They're not really, you can't find Hassan's community presence anywhere on the internet because he just exists on Twitch, and it's a lot of like young people, and he doesn't really do a good job at building a community. It's just like fans. For Fuentes is just too niche, and he's himself. I said it, and I will continue to say it. I said it at the time, he up with the Kanye West thing, and he did. That was probably the end point of his career, was the Kanye West thing. So Fuentes doesn't appear big on the internet because he just doesn't have very many fans. But they're very good at like pretending to be a lot of people, like either doing bots or like being very militantly active for the few people that are there. But there's nowhere near. Like if I had to guess, if Fuentes was to stream legitimately with no like viewer padding by like site stats or bots or whatever, Fuentes probably streams to maybe, I guess would be 5 to 800 people, would be my guess. Hassan has a lot of support on Twitter, it seems like. Is that just leftist though? Hassan doesn't have fans on Twitter. He has leftist communities that he can synergize with on Twitter, but they're not like his fans. They're just other people that kind of like synergize with him because he's part of that. He's part of like that community. So they can synergize. What is this? Let's revive Google Plus. Fuentes is a super dope stream setup. It looks nice, sure. Yeah. Then how does he manage to do the AFPAC stuff, or is that dead now? I think the AFPAC stuff is dead now. I don't know. Maybe he'll try to do it again next year. We'll see, but I don't know. I'm not sure. They canceled it. They didn't do it this year, right? But those guys also had a lot of problems maintaining relationships. Fuentes blew up like every relationship that he'd formed, right? The Ali Alexander thing crashed and burned. The Milo Yiannopoulos thing crashed and burned. The Kanye West stuff didn't pan out. Donald Trump publicly disavowed him. Is John Doyle the guy, or who was the guy that came from his community? Nick something? Some guy that like, yeah, he's just, Fuentes has burned a lot of bridges. He's lost a lot of political capital. He banked a lot on the Kanye West stuff. His website was like a big drag expense. Sneeko and him go back and forth. I don't know if Sneeko and Nick will ever truly break up though, because they both kind of need each other right now, because they're both like super canceled, and they can both kind of like make content with each other and vibe and all that with each other, when there aren't a lot of other people who'd be like willing to. So I don't know if those two will ever truly be over each other. Oh, Jaden is who I was thinking of, yeah. How much does your Google Drive plus Dropbox storage setup cost? Nick is going after Trump now. Does that change the way you view him in any way? No, they've been doing it for a bit. But I mean, Trump is like rapidly pro-Israel, and Trump is not as extreme on the things that Nick values. And Trump kind of burned Nick publicly, right, when he disavowed him. And Nick tried to like play it cool, and he's like, yeah, publicly, he's got to say that. He's got to say that, but like secretly, like he knows, we're good, we're cool, he knows that. But I mean, it probably bothered him a lot, we might guess.
In the center of this vortex, we find Destiny, a figure who has inexplicably decided to draw a comparison between two figures of considerable online renown, Hasanabi and Nick Fuentes. Yet, much like the half-baked arguments he peddles on his streams, Destiny's attempt to draw a connection between these two personalities is marred by an incoherence that is both spectacular and utterly baffling. Let us embark on a journey to unravel this absurd tapestry, piece by piece, as we dive into the convoluted thoughts of Destiny himself, who now seeks to contrast the online presences of Hasanabi, a progressive titan, with Nick Fuentes, the self-proclaimed propagator of far-right ideals. First and foremost, let us address the central paradox in Destiny's critique, the idea that Hasanabi lacks a community on Twitter, and that his presence is confined solely to the secluded, isolated confines of Twitch. It is an assertion so disconnected from reality that one is forced to wonder whether Destiny is speaking from a parallel dimension where facts and common sense are mere suggestions. To suggest that Hasanabi, a streamer with millions of followers and an influence that spans across platforms, lacks a digital community is akin to claiming that the sun lacks warmth. The reality, of course, is that Hasanabi's presence on Twitter is not only palpable, it is arguably one of the most active, engaging, and mobilized communities within the progressive sphere. Yet, here stands Destiny, solemnly proclaiming that this isn't the case, perhaps unaware that his own critique of Twitter communities betrays his ignorance of the very platform he deigns to discuss. This leads us to an even more perplexing assertion, that Hasanabi's community is not one of fans, but rather a nebulous, undefined collective of leftists who simply synergize with him on Twitter. The semantic contortions required to make this argument work are nothing short of staggering. It's as if Destiny believes that online followership operates on some mystical principle of ideological fusion, where communities coalesce around shared views, but cannot be genuinely described as fans. This absurd redefinition of fandom ignores the fact that online followings are often driven by admiration, loyalty, and a shared sense of belonging, whether or not the individuals involved align perfectly with every ideological stance of the content creator. But alas, here we find Destiny floundering, as his argument crumbles beneath the weight of its own logical dissonance. It's as though Destiny has decided to reduce the multifaceted nature of digital communities to a series of nonsensical binaries. He juxtaposes this with his claim that Nick Fuentes' online presence is somehow more authentic, despite Fuentes' notoriously niche following, which is largely confined to the fervent but minuscule pockets of far-right internet culture. Destiny's attempt to contrast the size and influence of Fuentes' audience with Hasanabi's falls apart when we consider the fact that Fuentes' streams are often artificially inflated by bots or militant activity from a small group of dedicated followers. To suggest that Fuentes' audience is somehow more legitimate or organic is to ignore the fundamental nature of his appeal, an appeal predicated not on widespread popularity, but on a deliberately cultivated, exclusionary community that thrives on extremism and self-righteous isolationism. As we wade deeper into this quagmire of digital discourse, it becomes increasingly clear that Destiny's analysis of Nick Fuentes' trajectory is similarly flawed. Destiny characterized Fuentes' career as one of diminishing returns, citing Fuentes' failed collaborations with figures like Kanye West and the implosion of his alliances with others on the far right. Yet Destiny seems unaware that this same trajectory is one marked by the same insular, self-aggrandizing behavior that Fuentes has cultivated from the beginning, one where loyalty to Fuentes' brand of rhetoric trumps all other considerations, even at the cost of public embarrassment and dwindling relevance. If anything, Fuentes' political capital has been diminished, not by external factors, but by his own inability to form lasting relationships or build a sustainable following beyond his echo chamber. Herein lies another staggering contradiction in Destiny's reasoning. Fuentes' audience, which is described as small and niche, is simultaneously lauded for its purported militancy and effectiveness in pretending to be a larger, more influential force. Destiny seems to have a strange affection for this kind of fabricated perception, as if the very act of appearing more significant than one's numbers constitutes some kind of merit. This fascination with digital manipulation and online optics speaks to a deeper misunderstanding of what it means to truly influence an audience. Authenticity and genuine community building are far more valuable than the hollow, ephemeral illusion of online ubiquity that Fuentes' brand of extremism relies upon. And then, of course, we must address the rather bizarre assertion that Fuentes' burned bridges are somehow a sign of his failure, an argument that completely disregards the fact that Fuentes thrives in the very chaos he creates. Destiny's dismissal of Fuentes' political maneuvers as failures fails to recognize the truth that Fuentes' brand of politics is predicated on alienation, disruption, and the destruction of traditional alliances. In Fuentes' world, failure is not a deterrent but a badge of honor, a symbol of his commitment to the ideological purity of his niche audience. This, perhaps, is the greatest flaw in Destiny's analysis, his inability to grasp the strategic value of Fuentes' digital alienation and its profound appeal to his devoted followers. At this point, Destiny's analysis of Hasanabi and Nick Fuentes becomes less of a critique and more of a reflection of his own intellectual shortcomings. His inability to differentiate between the authentic community engagement that Hasanabi fosters and the carefully crafted, self-serving community that Fuentes builds speaks to a profound misunderstanding of digital influence. Destiny's critique lacks the sophistication necessary to analyze these figures in a meaningful way, and instead becomes mired in reductive comparisons that fail to capture the full scope of their online presences. Ultimately, Destiny's attempt to juxtapose these two figures is a perfect example of the dangers of oversimplification. In his eagerness to create parallels where none exist, Destiny ends up distorting the very nature of online communities and influence. His analysis, rather than illuminating the complexities of these figures, only serves to further entrench the divisive, reductive narratives that dominate internet discourse today. As Hasanabi and Nick Fuentes continue to carve out their respective niches in the digital world, it is clear that the true nature of their influence lies not in the size of their followings, but in the ways they shape the conversations around them, conversations that, unfortunately, Destiny has failed to grasp.